The darkest things humans create reveal the most about who we are. Fear, ritual, violence, folklore, monsters. This is Field Notes from the Dead. In the forests of the 16th century Europe, people believed monsters were hunting children. Literally. Men were accused of transforming into werewolves, of stalking villagers at night, of murdering children, of feeding on human flesh beneath the cover of darkness. And for thousands of people, the fear was completely real. But anthropology asks a very different question. What if Europe wasn't really hunting monsters? What if they were trying to explain a world that had become terrifyingly unstable? Today we're going to dissect the psychology of the werewolf trials and why it happened the way it happened. To understand the werewolf trials, you really have to understand the world that people were living in. The 1500s were brutal, and Europe was experiencing famine, disease, religious conflict, social instability, and widespread fear. The Black Death had permanently changed the psychology of Europe. Communities were deeply religious, violence was super common, and the child mortality rate was devastatingly high. And beyond the edges of many villages, there were real wolves. For most people, forests were not peaceful places like we see today. We all enjoy a good frolic through the woods or a good hike up to the nearest peak, but back in the 1500s, they were dangerous, they were cold, and they were incredibly unpredictable. People disappeared in them all the time. And monsters, they tended to appear when societies feel unsafe. During the 15th and 16th century, Europe experienced what historians want to call the werewolf panic. You've heard some other similar ones like the witch trials and the vampire burials, but thousands of people were accused of lycanthropy, the belief that a human could physically transform into a wolf. The accusations mirrored, again, the witch trials. Confessions, religious fear, torture, claims that the devil helped and made them do it, and almost always, violence. The accused were said to kill livestock, attack women, kidnap and eat children, and do all kinds of sorts of cannibalism. The werewolf became the ultimate symbol of uncontrolled human violence. They were unstable and angry and out to get everyone, and they would devour you no matter who you were. One of the most famous cases emerged in 1589 in Bedburg, Germany. A farmer named Peter Stump was accused of being a werewolf. According to the trial accounts, Stump confessed to transforming into a wolf and using by using a magical belt given to him by the devil. He was accused of murdering livestock and women and children. Some accounts claimed he consumed parts of his victims. This case horrified Europe. Pamphlets spread the story rapidly. People become super obsessed, kind of like we do with true crime today. But there's something important to understand. Most historians believe these confessions were likely shaped through torture, religious hysteria, and moral panic. The story itself became larger than the man. Peter Stump stopped being viewed as a human, and he became symbolic. This is where anthropology becomes fascinating, because many descriptions of werewolves closely resemble real fears surrounding disease and starvation. Europe was dealing with devastating illnesses during this period. You have tuberculosis, rabies, plague outbreaks, malnutrition. Tuberculosis in particular created terrifying physical symptoms. You had extreme weight loss, sunken facial features, very pale skin, coughing blood, and the community tended to isolate from you. When societies don't understand disease, so think 1500s, the sick can quickly become monstrous. Anthropologically, this happens repeatedly throughout history. Humans often transform this fear into a narrative, and those narratives turn into monsters. What strikes me most about how many werewolf accusations there were is often how they centered around children. Missing children, dead children, stories of children taken into the woods. Unfortunately, these historical realities of early modern Europe made these fears believable. Poverty was severe, famine devastated communities, families were struggling to survive. Children frequently died from illnesses, exposure, starvation, or even violence. And some historians have suggested something deeply uncomfortable. Sometimes it may have been psychologically easier to imagine a monster in the forest than to confront what desperation could drive human beings to do. Child abandonment, trafficking, murder, starvation. These are not supernatural explanations, they are human ones, and they were absolutely happening in early Europe. So why did Europe imagine this monster as a wolf? My thought is it's because wolves already represent fear. They hunted livestock, they circled villages, they existed just beyond the safety of civilization. But werewolves were more frightening than the ordinary predator because it represented a human becoming animalistic. The werewolf is what society imagined humans become when civilization fails. A creature ruled entirely by hunger, violence, instinct. There's no morality, no restraint, only appetite. So the anthropologically moral panics often create monsters out of social anxiety. And throughout history, societies under stress repeatedly search for symbolic enemies. We have witches, vampires, cults, outsiders, dangerous strangers. The accused are often people already living near the edges of society. Social outsiders, the poor, isolated, the physically different. These fears turn vulnerable people into explanations. And honestly, humans still do this. The monsters have simply changed shape. We have serial killers, cult conspiracies, moral panics, internet hysteria, but the psychology underneath it remains remarkably the same. Humans create monsters when reality becomes too frightening to process directly. Maybe the werewolf trials... Sorry guys. Maybe the werewolf trials were never really about wolves. Maybe they were about hunger and disease and missing children, social collapse, and the terrifying realization that violence doesn't always come from something supernatural. Sometimes it comes from ordinary humans living in desperate circumstances, and maybe the truth was more frightening than any monster in the woods. Because throughout history, the creatures humans fear have often been reflections of themselves. Do you think societies create monsters to explain fear or to avoid confronting human violence directly? Comment below, let me know what you think.